Welcome to another episode of One-on-One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week, Foreigner guitarist Mick Jones. Their new album is In Concert Unplugged. Definitely worth checking out. Listen, we are talking about guitarist Mick Jones here. There's no point really on me rambling on and on and on, but I will tell you this. We talk about the 40th anniversary of Foreigner, the 30th anniversary of Van Halen's 5150, the 40th anniversary of the Leslie West Band album that Mick was a part of, and so much more. So I will stop talking, and here is the one, the only, Mick Jones.
Is this Mitch?
Yes, this is Mitch.
Oh, hi. Good.
And
good to hear from you.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. And I've had a chance to meet you at a couple of Foreigner shows. The band has always been exceptionally gracious, so thank you for that.
Oh, that's good. That's nice. Thank you.
There is so much to talk about with you and your career, so I really don't know where to start. So let's go with the easy one. Let's talk about this new album, the Foreigner In Concert Unplugged, done last year in Michigan for the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. Talk to me about your involvement with that specific charity.
We actually we are sort of. This is the beginning of it, really. As I would say, it started sort of just before the summer of last year. In fact, it's only a year, which is about 8 months ago, I guess. It's we have had personal experience of the disease within the band. Our tour manager's daughter has been suffering from that since infancy, and there are other stories within the band, the crew, etc. That it just hit home, I guess, that this is really one of those diseases that never really gets to speak, as it were. It's incredible the pain and the suffering that it causes, and just seeing my friend's daughter, the way she has to live life, it's incredible, and yet she's doing great. She's handling it really well. She gets she's getting on with her life, but I remember my father had it, and I just remember what my mother had to go through with him, apart from his suffering. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Somebody's calling on the other line, I guess. That's what it is. Never mind.
Okay. So if I also may we speak a little bit about your health, because you had a heart surgery, and I've personally had 2 heart surgeries myself. How are you doing? Yeah, how are you doing these days?
Well, when they said heart surgery, it was a little. It wasn't exactly heart surgery, but it was probably equally as bad, actually. I would say it's replacement of the aorta. The main, I'm sure you're familiar.
Yeah.
If you had heart stuff, the main artery, and it was blocked about 90%. And I've just really discovered it on a checkup, going to the doctor just for regular kind of checkup. And he went a little further than I guess he'd been going before, and that's when it was detected. It's something my parents have suffered from basically from heart disease. My mother had a quintuple bypass, as in my father had a quadruple. So I guess. I was kind of, that was a sort of a risk that was there all the time. but it really gave me a chance to sort of stop and think about things a bit. First of all, think about how the hell I was going to deal with my life after that. But it gradually, it took me out for about a year, I would say.
Right.
They tell you, oh, you'll be fine in a few months. Not quite whoa there, but I guess, it's just it's one of those things, and you deal with it, and thank God, it was something that was I could deal with, and that they could patch me up. So.
Now, I saw a few Foreigner shows in the last couple of years where you weren't part of the band, and of course I've seen others where you were. Is that a situation that will still continue, or are you able to be, because you have this tour coming up that's going to start on April 1st and run us all the way till, I guess, July? Will you be a part of those, or do you still have to once in a while sit one out just to rest?
Yeah, I do. I do that. We, I can only do it because the band really, it's an incredibly tight band, and we have another guitar player that plays with us too. So, thank God, the band can sort of, we can kind of deal with that, as it were, and as you say, take a day here, a day there to recuperate for me. But usually what will happen is even if I don't feel like I can really get the energy up for a whole show, I'll do about a half a show.
Yeah.
And that usually works for me, and in fact it works very well. So I do as many shows as I possibly feel comfortable about, and those are the best parts of my day, the shows. So I do my best to do what I have to do, and just be careful and watch my health and exercise and all the good things that we need to do. So it's under control, let's say.
Yeah, and the shows are fantastic. In fact, let me ask you about some of the band members. Kelly Hansen, of course, was in the band Hurricane back, I guess, in the late 80s. And his career sort of went along. And, I had even bought that Hurricane album back in the day. It was a great album. But he was sort of this side guy until Foreigner. And he's transformed the band. I mean, he really has become the energy and the voice and the representative of the band, in my opinion. I mean, he's just spot on. What does he mean to you? How do you see him in the band?
Well, he was an incredible addition to the band, obviously. I knew pretty much we had sent a little CD around, like a karaoke thing for possible candidates for the job to sing over and send back, and I guess we had scoured England, America, and even Australia, following leads and suggestions and stuff, but it wasn't until about 6 months after we'd started, and I was starting to lose faith a little bit in the fact, I knew that it was absolutely vital that we had somebody who could step into those shoes, as it were, and really be able to do the job vocally, first of all, and then also, you consider somebody who has a presence, not only as a vocalist, but an entertainer, and a real great frontman who engages the crowd, who engages, you know, I mean, he's just gone from better to better to better. You know, it's just, can't really describe it. Really, he's so dedicated and he's so conscientious. You know, but then he turns into this. You know, at 9 o'clock every night, he turns into this animal, as it were. And he's incredible. He has the main thing that he had on at the beginning of everything was that he understood what it took to sing these songs, and gradually he worked. He worked his ass off, you know, incredibly to be able to, as I say, you know, his level of conscience about doing this gig, and you know what it represented and what the people's expectations might be, and all of those, you know, he's handled incredibly well, and he's carved out an identity for himself now, and you know, I can't really express how thrilled I am. I see him every night on stage, and I think, wow, you know.
Yeah, and I feel the same
we
way.
were so lucky, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that he saved the band because that's maybe too much, but he saved the band. I mean, to me, he's really brought in a special uniqueness that has helped carry on the sound and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
If I can, I'd like to look back at some of the past. 1984, Agent Provocateur comes out. Big success. That was yesterday. I Want to Know What Love Is. Band is on MTV, world tours, the whole thing. And then the band takes some time off. Next album comes out in 1987, and you decide that you're going to try your hand at producing. And 1986, 5150 with Van Halen comes out. First album with the new singer, your first time producing. Was that somewhat of a dangerous project to take on, especially for your first production? Because had Sammy Hagar not worked out, and you know, it could have been an unmitigated disaster, and all hell could have broken loose for your production career, right? I mean, so talk to me about making the decision, like, yeah, I'm gonna go do this, and be damned with the risks.
I guess I like to live dangerously, you know. It's really, you know, it started off by the whole idea of doing that with them. It started off with a suggestion from the A&R person, A&R guru, I guess they called him at the time, John McLaughlin. And you know, I'd known Sammy quite well over the years. I mean, really, we'd known each other for probably about 10 years at least at that time. And you know, I think that was sort of the connection in a way. It made it a little easier for me. It was a formidable kind of atmosphere when I got there, and I was, you know, I was nervous. I really was. I had worked, you know, in production before. Part of my writing, you know, involved production, and over the years I'd gathered quite a good amount of experience and a good amount of ability in communicating with people that were perhaps of elevated celebrity, and you know, but nevertheless, I'd heard a lot of stories about the craziness in the band, etc. But above all, you know, I heard some of the songs and I thought, wow, this could be really, really good. And I think, obviously, you know, I'm not going to sit around teaching Eddie Van Halen sort of what to play exactly, but I think probably the work with Sammy and getting the performances out of him was probably the main contribution that I had, plus the mixing and the overall production. But Sammy, I worked with him intensely, and I think I pushed him a little further than he's ever been before. So, but it worked out. It worked splendidly, you know, and it's an album I'm kind of proud to have been involved in. And again, you know, that was a precursor, I guess, of working with a band with a new lead vocalist. So I picked up a few things there. And but it was a great experience after all, and you know, there were ups and downs, etc., and during that time. But overall, you know, the end product was well worth everything that we had, the time and the effort we put into it.
Oh, absolutely. Now, of course, we're March 2016. That was March 1986, so 30 years.
Oh my God!
30 years. It's 30 years old now. Can you believe it? How do you think
it's
it held
funny
up?
You say that.
Yeah.
I was in LA the other day, and what I used to do when I was in the studio, when we come out or finish the day or whatever, I would usually get into my car, excuse me, and put a tape of whatever we've been doing that day, and you know, just cruise along with the roof down and just, you know, blaring loud and just get the feeling of what it'd be like to be driving with the finished product almost, you know, in the car and sort of looking around and getting a kind of a good feeling. And I was coming home. I was in LA about 10 days ago, and I was on my way from the studio back to the hotel, and I put the radio on, and it you know, just as I touched the dial, Why Can't This Be Love came on. And I got, you know, it was like a flashback almost for me. And, you know, it was, that's one of the things that you know, I still, I try and make records that I can listen to, as you say, 30 years later, and the song sounded incredible, you know.
Yeah.
So somehow, you know, I've been able to, gosh, can't remember what I was going to say there. Anyway, let's move on.
Right. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm.
Was it important for you to take that 3-year break between Agent Provocateur and Inside Information to do these other things? Was that sort of recharging your batteries, trying new challenges, or was there something going on in the band where working together just wasn't a good idea?
Well, yeah, it was a big gap. I had changes in my personal life. And, you know, we had dedicated so much to the beginning of the band, really since 1976, I guess. You know, nobody was prepared for the kind of success that we had. It was almost unheard of at the time for a band to come out and, you know, sell 4 to 5 million copies. There was only one other band, a new band that had done that, and it was Boston, I guess. And, you know, the intensity that came along with all that, and the expectation of, you know, could we pull it off, and could we do it again? Could we do it again? Could we do it again? And all that pressure, you know, had to be let off somehow. So really, I guess, you know, I think it was just trying to grab a little bit of our lives back and, you know, slow it down a little bit and But somehow, there were a few little problems flying around in the band, and the relationship between Lou and myself had, had suffered from a lot of that pressure. And I guess, when he chose to do a solo album at the time, which was fine, I thought, but I think it became obvious that there was a little more than that. And unfortunately, that sort of started to cause a bit of a rift in the band, and eventually led to our first breakup, really. And so everything kind of suffered from that. I wanted to keep busy. That's why I took on the
Van Halen.
The Van Halen, and then eventually, I took on the Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I thought I had to do something. If Lou wasn't going to be involved on a creative level so much, if Lou wasn't going to be, that Foreigner was going to become his number 2 priority, in other words, that I had to do something, really. And it started off with doing those productions, to really keep me, in a current mode and to challenge me, etc. Because I thrive off of challenges. So, and that was a big one right there.
Do you know of any reason why Lou why Foreigner became the second priority for Lou? Was it just I'm the lead singer and I get all the attention, so I must be the entire band and I'm going to go do my own thing? Or why did he just not have it?
I don't think that was his motive for doing his albums.
Okay.
But I think perhaps some of the people around him at the time were turning it into that a little bit. And, I've never really had, I had never to that point really had a major problem between Lou and I. I think at the bottom of everything, all the way through all that, all through the changes that came in the 90s and et cetera, I think, nevertheless, we had sort of a kind of a love for each other that was deeper, that it was born out of, the intensity of what we went through had been going through, through the last 8 or 9 years. And, I could never sort of look at it that way, but eventually it did start to get to me. The noise that was coming out of his camp, really. And so, that led to, the first major breakup, and, things, as I say, continued. We were estranged after a while, but deep down I always had a great love for Lou, and as a friend, as a co-worker, as a musician, and vocally, and as a lyricist too. So
now,
it was just a tough period.
Yeah, it really
and
was.
Unnecessary in a way, but I think also what fueled it was that both of us had a few little adventures in the drug area, and alcohol, I would have to say, as well, which contributed perhaps. So it was we managed the band, we managed what we were doing very, very well at the beginning, considering the expectation and the stress. But I guess it had to do, the top had to come off it at some point. So, and it kind of did.
Yeah, and I do want to get into the 40th anniversary. I'll just finish with Lou on one thing. How is the
Mhm.
relationship in 2016? Because he's been out there publicly saying it's the 40th anniversary. I would love to sing a song or two or a show with the band just to
Mhm.
celebrate that. Is that even remotely possible at this point, or
Well, it's quite possible.
okay?
Um, we've actually been talking about it, so I'm not at the point where I can say it's definitely going to happen, but we're all working on trying to make it happen. So
Oh, good.
it's kind of exciting,
Yeah.
and hopefully it'll be feasible and possible to pull it off next year. I mean, next year, of course.
Right. Right. Now,
So yeah, and Lou and I have communicated, and of course we got together when we were beneficiaries of the rock and roll, not rock and roll, the Songwriters Hall of Fame award. And since then, we've kept up a sort of a loose communication, and as I have actually also with Ian McDonald and Al Greenwood, Dennis Elliott, and Rick Wills. So
oh, that's great.
yeah, so as I say, we're in the early stages, but we're trying to put something together to commemorate. Well, it's scary when I say it, even 40 years.
Well, listen, when you say Van Halen was 30 years since you've done that, you go, oh my God.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you about that 40th anniversary. The last album, Can't Slow Down, with 2009. It's been 7 years since new material. Obviously, you have the In Concert Unplugged and other stuff. What are the plans for the 40th? Are we doing some kind of massive tour? Are we going to do a new album with new songs? What is the plan for the 40th? You can't just let it go unnoticed. That doesn't make
Oh
sense,
no
right?
no 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 no. We are putting my team, my people and myself as are putting, actually physically putting it together right now, trying to find the right venues that would make sense for us, and generally there will be a lot of events that go around the 40-year celebration. So, as I say, I can't really say that much about it right now, but we're talking about it. We have communication with Lou and his people, and it looks like it might be something that we can really pull off next year. So, and there's going to be a couple of new tracks coming out at some point within the next few months. Within the early part of 2017. So
New tracks with Jeff Pilson and Kelly and the new guys, or new
yeah,
track? Okay. And by the way, Jeff Pilson is a superstar. I mean, that guy can do
it's quite
anything.
something, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm biased. I'm friends of his, but boy.
Oh yeah.
Before
He's the AAA battery of the team.
oh, he can do anything. He's just
He's
sparkling.
absolutely amazing. I can't believe it.
Yeah, and
He's incredibly gifted.
and incredibly nice. Before we run out of time, I just want to get a couple of comments on some of your previous bands. The Leslie West Band, 1975-76. Leslie, of course, Mountain. To me, criminally underrated as a guitarist. I mean, here's a guitar hero that should be on the same posters as Jimi Hendrix and Eddie Van Halen. And
absolutely.
Just what was
I
it
agree
like?
100%.
Oh, I mean, totally special. That his tone, his style. Anyway, what was it like being in that band, and why didn't the band go further? Why did you have to end up having to sort of why it disbanded? Why did you have to go over to Foreigner? Why was this band not more successful?
Well, to be frank, it was a lot of outside sources were to blame for that. Leslie was dealing with health issues, and I would say I think it's been talked about enough, but with drug abuse issues, and that really everything we would do was sort of governed by that, and it was very difficult to keep the thing going, because he was so unpredictable and not himself, let's say. But nevertheless, he'd get up there and play his ass off every night, and I would just sit beside the stage and in awe sometimes, because he really is. He's an incredible, I'd say blues influenced guitar player, and completely underrated. It's a shame because Mississippi Queen still lives on, I guess, but it's their stairway to heaven, I guess. But
it really is.
Yeah, it was great in a way. I learned to deal with a lot of adversity on that, and see and understand what the sickness, how it was. It could destroy things, and it sort of did in that band, and it sort of dwindled into nothing,
And,
But it was a great. I have to say, it was a great preparation for me. In hindsight, looking back at that, it was very challenging. It was challenging as a musician, and it was challenging trying to keep things moving, and every day like a new story of misfortune, or something that was sort of beyond my control. So.
And you'll be happy to know, since we're talking timelines, that the Leslie West Band album is 40 years old this year also.
Is it really?
Yeah, 1976.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of great anniversaries for you this year. You should get Eddie and Leslie and all of them just to play on
that would be a plan.
Yeah, I mean it's you've got 3 anniversaries to deal with this year, and then I know our time is short because they said try to keep it to half an hour, and we're there. But I'd be remiss if I didn't just quickly get a comment about your time in Spooky Tooth. One of those influential bands that had a sort of I don't want to say a cult following, but they really sort of changed the scene, and then they disappeared off the scene for a while. But how was that cutting your teeth back in 72, 73, those early days? And since you talked about learning experiences with Leslie West, what did you get out of Spooky Tooth?
Well, with Spooky Tooth, I think working with Gary Wright came at a timely moment for me, because I'd been living in France and working over there, and it was the time when I figured I would have to really get back to England and get back to my roots, as it were, and eventually, hopefully, that would bring me to America, which it did, fortunately. And right from the offset, I mean, I was a huge fan of Spooky Tooth, so, as much as it was intimidating, actually, the thought of replacing Luther Grosvenor at the time, it was very, very exciting, and I forged a real writing relationship with Gary, and it really helped to shape my, what was to come, and as far as putting my own band together, and so it was an important phase for me to go through that. And we did 3 albums, as you probably know, and I also got experience with working with Gary and Mike Harrison as vocalists, and seeing, it sort of lodged, I think something sort of stuck in my mind from that time. And as I went forward, I'd worked with 2 guys one guy was, hit the high notes, one guy was the gravelly low, kind of bluesy sound, and I think that's what I kind of had as my, as my example of what I felt I'd like to go in a direction that would be similar to that. It was a little bit like the Righteous Brothers kind of vibe. And when I listen back to those albums, it really is. It's sort of it's a bit funkier and perhaps a little less commercial than them. But it gave me kind of a sort of an idea of kind of the voice, the sound of the voices that I would consider, eventually when I put the band together.
Yeah. Well.
And Lou and consequently
Kelly
have kind of, they've actually been able to achieve that in one person.
Yeah.
The highs and the lows. So,
yeah. With this incredible career you've had, I could go on for another 2 hours, but they said let's keep it to half an hour, so I'm going to respect
we actually do have to.
But
yeah.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. I've enjoyed every Foreigner show I've ever seen. The new album, In Concert Unplugged, is fantastic. And, of course, thank you for your time. And thank you for being a part of my life for 40 years.
Oh, thanks a lot, man. That's very kind.
Thank you, Mick.
Thank you.
Bye-bye
Thanks.
now. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it, folks. My interview with the one, the only, Mick Jones of Foreigner. Over 40 years of bringing great music to the masses. The new album, In Concert Unplugged. The band on tour this year and, of course, next on that 40th anniversary. Please head over to Twitter. @Mitch Lafon is where you can find me. On Facebook, one-on-one, Mitch Lafon. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Mick Jones. All I can say is, yes, thank you. I can now retire. With that, bye for now. See you soon.